Hello and welcome to the News Unlocked, the show that takes you behind the headlines to the real stories that matter. Today we focus on what is being called by some as Bihar's Rozgar election, the election where jobs are top of the mind. Yes, that's right. As the first phase of polling is over in Bihar, or campaigning is over in Bihar, it's clear that jobs are one of the main issues in this election. The opposition RJD is promising 10 lakh jobs. The BJP says we'll give 19 lakh jobs. The real question is, where are the jobs in Bihar? Why is it so difficult to create jobs in a state where hardly any industry has opened up in recent time? Why is it therefore that thousands are forced to leave and migrate to other states and cities? We're going to do a deep dive into the real issues behind Bihar's job crisis. Our correspondent Ankit Tyagi went to Dalmia Nagar, a place that had once been poised to outshine Jamshedpur as an industrial town. Today, this town in Bihar is bereft of industry and stands as another example of the lost hopes of this state. Let's take a look at what Ankit Tyagi saw on the ground.
This was a bustling industrial town that employed more than 20,000 people when it was shut down in 1984. Dalmia Nagar of Dehri near Sasaram in Bihar promised to rival Jamshedpur in the 1980s before it died a sudden death.
सड़क तो आज भी 70 साल पहले का बना हुआ सड़क है। आज सरकार द्वारा नगर पालिका द्वारा बनाया हुआ सड़क में अंतर आप खुद स्वयं देख सकते हैं। ये 80 साल 90 साल पहले का बना हुआ सड़क पर हम लोग खड़े हैं। 300 दिन यही एक जगह था। 300 दिन इसी काउंटर से लेबर पेमेंट होता था। 1 तारीख से लेकर के ये जो पेमेंट वाला पेमेंट काउंटर है, 1 तारीख से लेकर के 30 तारीख तक डेली पेमेंट था।
Established in 1933, this industrial town had sugar, paper, cement, chemicals and other factories within its boundaries. The combined estimated turnover of these industrial units was to the tune of 130 crore rupees in 1983-84 when it all shut down.
This used to be the hospital. It was supposed to be about a 100-bed hospital in Dalmia Nagar. A very well-planned, in fact, entire township which was created, which lies in complete ruin now.
In the 1990s, when Lalu Prasad Yadav became the railway minister, some land was acquired to set up a railway wagon factory. But that too remained an unfulfilled promise.
हाँ तो बहुत सारे बोर्ड लगे हुए हैं, चीनी, सीमेंट।
आसपास से अभी हाल फिलहाल में लगा है, इलेक्शन के चलते लगा हुआ है। स्ट्रीट लाइट भी लगाया गया है। नोटिस कीजिएगा, पोल पे सारे लाइटें भी लगे हैं। पहले वीरान पड़ा हुआ था, पूरा अंधेरा रहा करता था। साफ हो रहा है अब। जब जब चुनाव होता है तब तब नया नया बात निकलता है। मतलब यही सब की विकास के लिए कि होगा अब होगा, तो नीतीश जी कर रहे हैं, तो लालू जी कर रहे हैं, सब लोग। तब क्या, अभी तो हमारा वोटर आईडी बना हुआ है, इसी साल बना हुआ है, लेकिन हम सोच में कि किन में दे वोट, किसको करें।
Dalmia Nagar, or what is left of it, falls under the Dehri Assembly constituency and votes on 28th of October in the first phase of Bihar Elections.
So let's look at that question of jobs in Bihar. Why is it so difficult for any government in the state to have provided jobs for its people? Abhishek Singh is Secretary General of the Bihar Entrepreneurs Association. Also joining me is Himanshu, economics professor, who's looked at this issue very closely. I want to come to you, Abhishek, first on the ground as a representative of the Bihar Entrepreneurs Association. Every data point shows that urban and rural unemployment in Bihar has actually increased and is among the worst in the country. Why is it so difficult to create jobs, to set up industry? We see number of industrial workers has also declined. Why is it so difficult to create jobs in Bihar?
Rajdeep, thank you for the question. First of all, we have a very good topic in this election, and this is the first time in last 10 years I have seen this topic of unemployment and industries in Bihar. It started with the opposition party and now it's taking all the major parties. First of all, we have to see what is the trend of welcoming the industries in Bihar. When we have welcomed industries, investors and different corporates in Bihar, 10 years back, we had a Global Bihar Summit, where major corporate of the country were invited in Patna. After that, we have not done any single investors meet, corporate meet, which can bring investment to the state. And the state is lacking in attracting investors and corporate to the state, and it is not coming from the head of the state. And this is the major reason we are not welcoming investors in the state.
So, are you telling me that at no stage, is it therefore a lack of initiative on part of the government? Or is the real problem something within Bihar itself? Because let's be honest, this is not a problem that started in the last 5 years or the last 10 years. If you look at the data, it clearly suggests over the years, all that has happened as the population rises, Bihar is unable to provide remunerative jobs for its people. The population far outstrips the number of jobs, and interestingly, agriculture in particular, where 75% of the population is dependent, only contributes 18.7% of the state income. So where is the problem, Abhishek? Is the problem with the state, or is it just the structure of Bihar?
No, the problem is with the state. The problem is with the implementing agency, that is the Department of Industries of the government of Bihar. If we see the district industrial center data of all the 38 districts of the state, we see that when the project is signed, if you see the SIPB approval, the project is approved by the SIPB board, that is the Department of Industries of Bihar. But if we see the implementation or the execution or the final production from that particular industrial unit, that is not happening. So there is a problem in implementation of that particular policy. In last 3 years, I would like to enlighten you that in last 3 years, there has been very few meetings of the SIPB, which approve the industrial unit in the state. So it is all about the industrial, implementation by the industrial department for the industry policy. One more data, if you see the Startup Bihar policy, I have made the Startup Bihar policy for government of Bihar. If you see the Startup Bihar meeting, which approves the seed fund for the startup, so in 1.5 years, there is only one meeting that has happened by the industry department, and 5 industry commissioner of the state has changed. So it is all about the industry department and the implementation plan of the industry department.
So you're saying it's about implementation and execution. Do you agree with that, Himanshu? Is the problem with implementation and execution by the state? Or is it, as Nitish Kumar and others claim, that Bihar is a landlocked state and difficult, therefore, to attract industry? Do you believe that the problem lies with certain historical legacy factors with Bihar?
I think it's a combination of factors, and pointing out to one single issue won't be the answer to it. But let me begin by saying that this issue of unemployment or issue of joblessness in that sense is not just restricted to Bihar. It's something which the country has been facing for quite some time. And although it has become a political issue in Bihar, and therefore most people are talking about it. But coming back to Bihar, I think a lot of issues are historical issues, and that basically also includes lack of infrastructure, lack of a coherent policy in terms of attracting investment. But I think infrastructure has been something which has been a big bane. I mean, you might have a number of summits organized a number of times, which is what Nitish Kumar did. But ultimately, if you don't provide suitable infrastructure to the industrialists, uninterrupted electricity, roads, and various other infrastructure, that is the basic minimum that I'm talking about. Even that basic minimum, Bihar has not been able to provide. But I think it's also has to do with the approach towards attracting industry. In a sense, what kind of industries do you want? Yes, there are constraints as far as Bihar is concerned, in the sense it doesn't have any mineral wealth, or it doesn't have the land which is barren land or surplus land which is available, which can be given as. Now most of the industries are looking for some kind of support from the state government. Now in that situation, when we have land is a constraint and anything else cannot be provided, and you can't provide any kind of tax stops. So it's also something which is where there is a constraint that has been imposed on the state because of various successive finance commissions over a period of time, particularly after the split with Jharkhand, where most of the industries were located in the unified Bihar. But Bihar was left with no industries and no minerals and nothing. But I think at the end of it, the blame has to go to the approach of whether you wanted to invite people, invite industrialists, invite businessmen to come and invest in Bihar. it has to do with what kind of an approach you had. And I think governments were not serious in inviting industries in that sense. And infrastructure was not being provided. Support that what was being talked about is certainly which was not coming up from the side of the state government. I think all of these combined together. And I think last point I think which is important, which is what we should be also talking about, is that, I mean, apart from these infrastructure, what industry is looking for, or what any business, for example, would be looking for, is some kind of a stable governance structure. And I think if you don't give that kind of sense of security, or you don't give the sense of some kind of stability as far as policy is concerned, or in terms of the free functioning of the industries, I think those issues, no industrialist will come, however how many summits we are doing,
right,
whatever kind of support we need to give.
In fact, stable governance is linked to law and order. Let's be honest, Bihar has had the same chief minister for 15 years. So it's not about the stability in terms of government. It's more in ensuring law and order in every part of Bihar. It was, of course, many believe much worse in the Lalu years, and now that remains a critical issue also in other parts of Bihar, although many would say that was at least initially Nitish Kumar's big achievement. I'll come back to both of you, but let's look at these election manifestos. Remember, the BJP promised 19 lakh new jobs in the next 5 years. The RJD is promising 10 lakh new jobs on day one through a cabinet regulation. For years, elections have been fought on the promise of providing Naukri. The truth is very different. Take a look.
Long before the pandemic hit, Bihar had been languishing at the bottom of employment indices for decades. And hardly any new industry or factory has opened up in the state in the past several decades. Many pre-existing industrial units too shut down over the years. And the factories which are there do not seem to be boosting employment or productivity. An average Bihar factory employs just 40 workers, almost half of the all-India average of 76.7 workers. Bihar has one of the lowest productivity of labor. This leads to a lower compensation for workers. Bihar's contribution to India's industrial output is a low 0.5% of total gross value added of the industrial sector in 2016-17.
हमारा बिहार आगे बढ़ रहा है और आज जो बिहार का विकास दर बढ़ा है.
Chief Minister Nitish Kumar says his opponents have a worse record.
और कितना ज्यादा हम लोगों ने रोजगार का अवसर दिया. पहले क्या हालत थी भाई? 15 साल राज किया, 10 साल तक बिहार और झारखंड एक था. उस 15 वर्ष में इन लोगों ने रोजगार का अवसर नहीं दिया, सरकारी नौकरी नहीं दे पाए. मात्र 95,000 15 वर्षों में, और हम लोग तो 6 लाख से भी आगे बढ़ा दिए.
Amid the coronavirus lockdown, Bihar's unemployment rate increased to a whopping 46.6% in April 2020. That was almost double of the national rate. But by September, it had come down to 11.9%. Still higher than the national average, but lower than states like Rajasthan, which had 15.3%, and Haryana, which was at 19.7% for the same period. Experts point out Bihar is yet to realize its potential as an industry and manufacturing hub. The state's labour is still highly concentrated in the agricultural sectors. But income from farm labour remains miserably low. With an estimated 2.33 crore agricultural labour force, which makes up 1/3 of Bihar's 7.29 crore electorate, many still remain landless and, coupled with lack of other non-farm employment opportunities, are forced to migrate out of the state in search for jobs. But megawatt election campaigns have largely remained silent about the fate of these agricultural workers.
And I spoke a short while ago to the Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar and Finance Minister about Bihar's growing unemployment, specifically asking why no major industry has opened up in Bihar in the last decade and more. Listen into what he had to say.
Yes, we have opened. More than a dozen industries have opened. You want to Ultratech. Have you heard the name of Sri Cement? It is coming in Bihar. You have Banjari Cement, this Dalmia Cement. In the last 2 years, 3 big cement factories have come to Bihar. And see, each and every state is its own limitations. Bihar is not like Gujarat, Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu. We don't have a barren land. Land is very fertile and the land holdings are very small. So no big industry can come to Bihar. Only agro-based industries can come to Bihar. And we are concentrating on maize. We are concentrating on makkah, on vegetables, fruits. And the last 5 years, more than 1,000 new chawal mills has been opened in Bihar. And in the coming days, agro-based industry will be our main focus. So we don't have a mines, we don't have a minerals. So you can't have a industry like Jharkhand, because when Bihar, Jharkhand were together, all the industries coming to the Jharkhand part of Bihar. Can you tell me a single industry has come to Bihar? Apart from public sector, Baroni and other some factories, not a single industry has come in the last 58 years in this part of Bihar. Because only when we came into government, some industries started coming to Bihar. So in the next 5 years, the agro-based industries, the small industries, which we have a potential, we will try to create more and jobs out of these small and agro-based industries.
Agro-based industries is the only way forward, says the Deputy Chief Minister Abhishek Singh, Secretary General, Bihar Entrepreneurs Association, and Himanshu Economics Professor, JNU, with us. Why don't you take that, Abhishek Singh? You heard the Deputy Chief Minister saying Bihar has its limitations. Agro-based industries are the future. Do you believe that? Do you believe that is the way forward?
Look, agro-based industries and food processing industries has to be the first. That everybody knows. But there has been 8 other clusters. There has been leather cluster, there has been footwear cluster, there has been jute park near Purnia. There has been huge, mega food park in Khagaria, and then another food park in Gaya, Buddha Food Park. All those food park, all those leather park, and all those industrial parks, they have not been successful. Why? Because they have not started. So there has been 1 or 2 units. They have not marketed itself. What Mr. Himanshu said, that they have not been able to welcome or attract investors. So it is all the job and responsibility of the government and to attract and woo the investors. It's what we have done in our 10 years or 15 years, what we have seen, that we have been waiting for the investor to come to the state. That now there is huge competition among the states, and the government of Bihar should have wooed or welcomed or attracted the investors and corporates.
So, you're saying that the government of Bihar should have gone and welcomed investors and corporate, but why would they come, Himanshu, to Bihar? Many will say, as the Deputy Chief Minister is saying, look, that agro-based industries are our only future. In the other aspects of industrialization, we are subject to the law of diminishing returns. Do you believe, therefore, that is the future in one of the most fertile belts? Maybe create an agro-industrial hub across Bihar?
I mean, this was already there, in the sense Bihar had a number of sugar mills, rice mills, and various other industries were already there. So it's not something which is, and it is bound to be the case where agriculture is the primary employer in that sense. And this is a state where still almost like 90% of the population is in rural areas. But I think that's something which is now, after 15 years, it's something that is coming out from the Deputy Chief Minister does appear to be slightly not honest, according to me. I think, okay, there is a problem with the landlocked, and industries will have a problem as far as getting resources and getting various raw materials concerned. But what about services? I mean, that's been the fastest growing sector, and that's something which does not require huge amount of land, does not require so much amount of land, so much amount of raw material, and it is something where if a place like, say, Bangalore or a place like Hyderabad, these are not something which requires so many of.
No, are you saying Himanshu that Bihar could have become a center for IT parks, for example? Biharis do so well outside Bihar in the IT sector. Are you telling me that IT parks could have been built over these years in Bihar?
A number of service industries. This is just one example of it, that is why this whole argument appears very fallacious, in the sense you're saying that, okay, we don't have raw material. We don't have to have. I mean, most of the states have seen where these service sectors, and this is something which is nationally the case, that the service sector has been the primary driver of growth. Why is it that this is something which cannot be done? But again, that has to go into not just the physical infrastructure, but also human capital infrastructure. When your educational institutions are not functioning well, when you don't have good engineering and IT centers, when you're not providing good life quality of life to people who are working in the IT sector, then you are bound to not discourage people from coming and working there. I mean, it doesn't require a huge amount of infrastructure to do many of the services like call centers and various other things. I think a lot of excuses are being passed on to agro-based industries. And I think that's something which is very important. It should be done. But I think there is also scope for various other industries which would have been done by the state government in the last 15 years, but were not given the priority, which is what many other states were doing.
Let me ask both of you very quickly in conclusion. Himanshu, you first. What would you therefore suggest as the road forward? What would you suggest? Whether it's a Nitish Kumar government again or whether it's an opposition government. The opposition seems to be saying we'll provide government jobs. We'll make sure that police positions are filled up, teacher positions are filled up. Is that the way forward?
I don't think that's something which is, and a government cannot provide employment to everybody in this state. I mean, this has never been the case, at least not in this current situation when government jobs are actually getting cut down. I mean, there is overall the trend is that the government jobs are coming down, but it's also very costly. I mean, since you're talking about something like 30 to 40,000 crore rupees annual outgo, if you are going to give 10 lakh jobs per year, and finances are not something which Bihar government is in a very, very happy situation. But I think you have to create an enabling framework, and I think that enabling framework will have to come by providing basic infrastructure, not just the physical infrastructure in terms of road, power, connectivity, but also human capital infrastructure, and provide a good quality of life where you don't have to fear about law and order, you don't have to fear about falling sick and then not being able to take care of yourself. Right. You have to provide educational facilities to the children, to the youngsters, and to various other people. I think that investment is the only way to take care of the problem of unemployment. All these 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 30 lakh, you can keep promising government jobs. But I don't think any of these are solutions to the real problem. And this is a problem which is a serious problem, not just for Bihar, but for all of the country.
Anyway, I think you make an important point, especially our human capital when it comes to education, when it comes to health infrastructure. Final word from you, Abhishek. If you had one recommendation, what would it be? I have 30 seconds.
They have the new government should focus on implementing the existing schemes. If you talk about IT parks, you talk about setting up educational hub, you talk about any food processing or agro-based park, jute park, leather park, footwear park, and electric manufacturing cluster. That was a project by central government. All has to be implemented. They were all on paper, they were all on schemes, but it has not been executed and implemented. So whoever is the next government, they should concentrate on implementing their target-based implementation of those projects.
Okay, I think that's a clear message. If you want to actually get jobs, get serious about it, not just at election time, but be ready to brand Bihar much better. The Biharis have wonderful minds. We've seen that across the country. All they need is an enabling environment. Unless governments create that enabling environment, Bihar will continue to fall behind. I appreciate Himanshu, Abhishek Singh for joining me here as we did this deep dive into Bihar's crisis of jobs. That's it on the News Unlocked, news without the noise. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.